Okay. So for some of you that attended the academy, we have discussed budgeting for cooperative businesses during the academy. But it was pointed out to us that some of you wanted to kind of dig deeper and get more familiar with the spreadsheets and using spreadsheets. And we thought that the best way to do that was actually give you an opportunity to get some hands-on practice with using spreadsheets. And so that's why we wanted to attempt to do this with Google Sheets. Give you an opportunity to ask questions, to explore the versatility of using spreadsheets for business planning. Because I think it could greatly enhance our efforts. And what we're trying to do is to create successful co-ops. Gretchen just loaded the spreadsheet location here in the chat. So if you can, open the drive there in the folders. And as we go through, we'll go through this together. And I'll give you an actual opportunity to actually go through the numbers and work with the numbers and get some practice using the spreadsheets. And what we hope to accomplish with this is first is to promote the use of these planning tools when it comes to decision makings in our co-ops. Then again, practice using spreadsheets, and then to show the utility of organizing the data in a way that will enhance and enable our ability to do scenario exploring. You know, give us an opportunity to enable us to better explore the what ifs. You know, what if this factor changed? What impact would that have on the business? What if several factors change? What could we expect? And when we organize the spreadsheet, the data entry for the spreadsheets in such a way that it will, a lot of this stuff is linked, then you don't have to go through the tedious task of changing each and every sheet. And it makes it a lot easier if you do it this way. You know, in this age of pivoting, it's always good to be able to assess what's impacting you, and if some of these factors change, what you can expect. So, and that's what we hope to explore today. So with that, I'm going to open up spreadsheet. Invite you to follow along. And might be a little bit awkward here. You know, when you're planning for cooperative business, you never have complete or perfect information. We make decisions with the best information we have available at the time. But when we get better, more reliable information, I need to take a look from another perspective because things change. So we want to make or ease the investigative potential as much as possible. We want to see the impact of changes. We want to be able to explore some of the key factors. So we're starting here with the startup budget. When you start a business, you want to look at some key items here in your startup budget. And if I look away, it's because I'm using my phone for broadcasting, but I'm actually got my desktop that I'm using for this presentation. But here in the startup budget, you start by listing some of the assets you're going to need to launch your business. And here you see some examples of that. And let me first introduce you to the business we're looking at. We're looking at beekeeping. We're going to start a commercial beekeeping business that sells honey for the most part But we're also going to look at some other products, beeswax, and some of the products that we could sell that derive from beeswax. So in starting this honey business, these are some of the assets we need to acquire. So office equipment, office furniture, and some of the things more unique to beekeeping itself is the processing equipment. We have here beehives. We're going to have 500 hives. And I'll tell you a little something about beekeeping. The hives is where the queen, each hive has a queen, and the queen is the one that lays the eggs. They have all the drones and the workers, and they make the honey. The workers make the honey. And I'll show you, let's take a look at some of the photos here. We can get an idea of what we're dealing with. This is called a super. This is the container where the bees store their honey. You have several of these. We're going to have 500 hives, so there'll be many of those. This is the flatbed truck, and you'll see on our equipment list, asset list, we have listed a flatbed truck. That's useful for when you collect the hives during harvest time, or when you want to relocate the hives. This is a photograph of a hive. This area is called the brood box. This is where the queen is and where she lays her eggs. All the workers work and store honey in the upper box. They usually put, this is called the supers. They usually store the honey there. And once this box, you may have 3 layers there initially. But once this box starts to get about 2/3 filled, they will add another box so that the bees can continue to produce the honey. Then at harvest time, and harvest time usually comes about 3 times a season, mid-June, perhaps early, then mid-September. They will take these 2 top boxes, if it's 2, sometimes 3, and take them to be processed. And again, to give you an idea of what we're talking about, let's take a look at this video quickly. Just to give you some idea of how the honey business, how the honey is extracted from the boxes. These are the frames that were in the box that the guys loaded into this extractor. And what you're seeing is the...
Benny, I think you have to change your screen. Is it to the video one?
To which one?
I think you're just sharing the Excel sheet right now.
Okay, so let me stop share.
Yeah.
And share screen. And where is this? We try it again. It's still not sharing.
Yeah, if you want to, if you stop sharing again, there'll be the different options of which one, and you'll just have to share your whole screen. Is that okay?
Yeah, where would I?
So when you click share your screen, and then it's going to be the one in the top left corner.
Okay. Is that it? No?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep, that works.
All right, this is the extraction process. Here they took, the super box had 10 frames. These are the frames that was inside the box. And what this initial step is doing is taking the end caps, that's the wax caps at the end of the frames. It's removing the wax caps so that the honey can be exposed and extracted. And all this is done automatically, of course, for a commercial operation. And let me say that during the harvest season, each of those super boxes will contain, about, I think each frame holds about 12 pounds of honey. And I have that data on the other sheets. Let me move it down some where you can see more. Again, this is the wax that's being removed, the frames moving down the line. And the frame will go into this extraction chamber. And that's like a centrifuge where it spins it and forces the honey out of the cones of the frame. Let me move it down a little more. So that's the frame with honey. Those frames have just been emptied. So he's removing the empties and loading the full ones. And that's the centrifuge that actually rotates, spins the frames and force the honey out. Takes about 8.5 minutes to extract the honey from the frames. The wax goes to one chamber where it's melted and purified. And of course, the honey goes elsewhere. But just want to give you a sense of how the process worked, at least the extraction part of it. And that's the frame after the honey has been removed. And of course, those are then cleaned and returned. All right. So let's go back to in the wax. I told you about the wax. They separate the wax and purify it. And here's some of the products that's, of course, available with the wax. Lip balm, beeswax. Lip balm is one. Most of you probably heard of Burt's Bees. Candles, beeswax candles. It's a very clean burning candle. something that could possibly appeal to those who are more health conscious. And then here's the beeswax block. They sell blocks of beeswax for about $9.50 a pound. We go back to the startup. So we see here that the equipment that we use, processing equipment, pretty expensive for that. The 500 hives, beehives with queens. Forklifts, you need forklifts to transport the boxes, flatbed truck. Beekeeping safety wear, of course, you've got to have that. And then the wax melting and filling equipment. This is, if we decide to pursue the manufacturing of lip balm or candles. Some of the other startup expenses would be like the license permits, legal fees, various other costs, which are one-time costs, but we want to capture the cost of these. And the difference here in the startup assets, these are all expenses, but they will be expensed over time in depreciation, and I'll show you the depreciation table. And then we have the variable expenses. These are expenses that change with the volume of sales. Things like inventories, supplies, and these are like the jars, labels for the honey, the tubes for the lip balm, and the wick for the candles. Advertising, here we're showing advertising as a percent of sales. And that's a number that could change. Of course, the volume would change with sales, but the number itself may change. Initially, you may want to do a higher percent of sales in order to create awareness and interest, desire in the purchase decision. You may want to drive that with advertising. And if your brand becomes better known, you may feel that you can reduce that percentage somewhat. And then shipping and hive maintenance. Of course, the hive is something that has to be maintained. The boxes will have to be maintained, the health of the bees, and the queen occasionally will have to be replaced. But hive maintenance is a cost. We got that at 3%.
So are those percentages industry percentages or just general good practice?
Some of these came from actual industry. And typically when you do this, you want to know where you got the information from. But and some of these are something I just made up just for illustration purposes. But a lot of the data, when we get to the operating data, came actually from some of the industry and the beekeeping associations and other places.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Here we see variable costs. Total variable cost is 32.8%, which is important when we start to look at break even. And then here's some of the fixed costs. Look at rent. And when it comes to something like beekeeping, this rent is about land because you need several acres if you're going to have 500 hives of bees. I think the law here in Tennessee requires you to have at least 5 acres in order to have an unlimited number of beehives. I think anything less than that, and you're limited, I think, to just a few hives. So this is rent, and this is based on rental for 5+ acres in Tennessee. Then utilities, insurance, and the other fees that are pretty customary. Depreciation is something I want to point out because that's the cost. This is the period cost because these are costs per month. And the actual acquisition of the assets was something that we did up front. But that's right here is considered an asset. The expense comes in when we depreciate it. We're going to depreciate it over time. And we'll see that when we go to the next sheet, the depreciation sheet. But I just want to point out to you that we want to acknowledge the cost of the equipment and the other assets that we bought. but we want to do it over the life of the asset. That's what this represents.
Hey,
And
Benny.
here we have, excuse me, go ahead.
Hey, this is Brendan. Just a quick question. So there's not like a separate expense sheet where those startup assets would be listed. This is the main way this is kind of the good practice to do it, just through this depreciation part,
Well,
right?
we've got it on we got a depreciation sheet, and let me point out on the bottom, we've got several sheets: startup, photos, depreciation. Then we're going to look at labor, sales, income statement, and then break-even analysis. So the depreciation schedule is actually on this page, and we'll go to that next.
But you wouldn't put it in on some, like, I don't know, income and expenses sheet necessarily.
Well, it will be considered there an income statement too. But what we do, we will, I listed here, well, let me show you the depreciation sheet just to answer the question. Let's go there. Here we see the office equipment, office furniture, all the assets that we bought. And we also look at the expected life of each one of these classes of assets. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 7, so forth. And then we figure the depreciation based on that. So, and then we'll come back to this later, because what I would want you guys to do is to complete year 3 and 4 of this depreciation schedule. Just give you practice using the sheet. But here I clicked on this for office equipment, year 1 depreciation. And you see here at the formula bar, this is the formula for that. So, and it shows you startup E4. That means it's the startup sheet, E4, and then click to that real quick. This is a startup sheet. There's E4, it's right here, that's office equipment, 5,000. So let's go back to depreciation. So for first year depreciation, we go startup E4, that slash means division, that's a mathematical operation. That's division. So startup sheet E4 divided by depreciation B4. There's 4, here's B, that's the expected life. So we're taking the cost of the equipment and divided it by the years of life to get the yearly depreciation. Same thing for office furniture. You see here, when I click on it, it shows you that the formula is startup E5. Again, startup, come to 5, E, 35,000. That was the cost. Then we want to divide, that's that slash, divided by the expected life, which was 5 years, 35,000 divided by 5, 7,000 a year depreciation. So this is how we calculate the depreciation. And this is what this sheet is for. You get some practice writing the spreadsheet for this. And the beauty of this is that something changed, you don't have to go to this sheet and change it, then come to this sheet and change it. And if it's used again in the income statement, and then go to the income statement and change it. You change it here, and all these others are linked, so they change automatically with it. And that's the utility of using this in a way that you've got your information organized and linked, so that you don't have to go through the tedious task of changing each and every sheet every time you want to change a factor. And this sheet, the startup budget, this is where you want to keep some of I guess some of your basic building block information, like the startup assets, your one-time expenses, the variable expenses, and then your fixed expenses for the year. This is monthly for the year. And for this example, I kept the fixed expenses basically constant, fixed variables also. So I'm taking a rather simplified view, but the point was to basically learn the mechanics of the spreadsheets. And here we have purchases of beeswax. And we get back out, we'll look at that again later too when we get to the sales sheet. Here's some of the assumptions that we make. We want all of this in a nice handy spot so that if any of these things changes, it'll change the calculations. Now, there used to be a feature with Excel that when you click on one of these cells, it would show you what all it was linked to. They still have that feature, but it comes with the professional service. And I'm sure that probably Google Sheets is the same thing. You have to pay for that feature now, but these things will be linked in other areas of the spreadsheets.
Betty, if I'm not mistaken, I think they can see where things are linked.
Can they hear? Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And
So
that's
can
good
you all
to know
see that?
you're-
I just want
Well, we may get this later. Yeah, we'll look at it later when we go back and look at some other things. But here we just made some assumptions about what we're doing with the operations, average shipping costs. And here we're looking at the possibility of online sales that we'll have to ship, average order. And actually, the average order for E-line sales was something like $84. But because it was honey, that's going to change depending on the industry, type of business, et cetera. Then we look at supplies for these retail sales. And basic our supplies are going to be jars and labels and tubes. Advertising, training allowance. We are co-ops. Education is key with co-ops. Therefore, we want a training allowance per worker. And here we have one per worker per month. And then, of course, some of the other basic costs, bank fees, website development software, taxes, and so forth. These are some of the industry-specific data about the production. When we look at honey production, they typically gather the honey and put them in either barrels or totes. A barrel will hold 55 gallons of honey. That's 660 pounds. And typically when you wholesale honey, you wholesale it by the barrel or the tote. A tote, 275 gallons, that's 3,300 pounds of honey. And here, let's looking at the super worth, the box that I showed you with the 10 frames. It holds 5 to 6 gallons of honey. So it ranges from 60 to 72 pounds. We're assuming for our purposes that our supers, that we have a pretty efficient operations. And our super will hold about 72 pounds of honey each. And each hive will have 2 to 3 supers. And those are the boxes that stacked on top of each other that contain honey. And we assuming that on average, we'll have 2.5 supers per hive. Producing hive, 500 hives. And that's the clip that we've seen earlier. And then the harvest per season. One of the things about beekeeping is that it's seasonal, unless you do the migration operation where you move your bees in the winter to a warmer climate, like to California or Florida or somewhere. Other than that, it's very seasonal. You have 3 harvests typically in mid-June, perhaps early August, and then late September. And then once it becomes cool, the bees become more dormant, or they huddle inside the brood base to keep warm, and they feed on the honey that they store. beeswax, you get about 1 to 2 pounds of beeswax for every 100 pounds of honey. So we decided to use, for our purposes, 1.5 pounds of beeswax per 100 pounds. And we look at this over a 12-month period. And to buy beeswax, you can buy beeswax at $9.50 a pound, which is about 49 cents an ounce. And the reason we buy it, you'll see later, is because we don't produce enough beeswax to actually form a sustainable business because of the seasonality. And I did that. We were looking at the seasonality of honey. You know, you produce honey during the warmer months. You may have some in inventory, but for the most part, when you sell wholesale, especially, you sell those and contract those to be sold during the harvest season. So you collect your barrels and your totes and prepare to ship those to your wholesalers or distributors, except for what you might keep on hand to sell yourself retail. So that's what we intend to do. But also you want a business that's sustainable year round. That's why we start looking at the beeswax, which is something that we could produce product for and sell year round. So let's go back to, but first, is there any questions about any of the startup budgets, startup expenses? And whatever business you're trying to start, it's going to be something similar. You're going to have to buy some equipment or perhaps even contract services. Going to have the fees and permits that you have to do. And then you can either from historical data or from information that you can obtain from other similar businesses, you get some estimate of the variable cost and then the fixed cost. And quickly, let me give you a few examples of some of the places you can look for information. In here, we got some information here from this site called Statista. That's a handy site. They have limited information available to you for free. If you want more in-depth information, it'll cost you something like $39 for a month for the service. It's something that we may look into depending upon the need. And since we're dealing with honey, of course, the USDA has issued several reports about that. So that's available. I needed information about land and renting land. So I went to LoopNet, which is one of the services. I'm sorry, this kind of, and then utility costs. So again, I use Statista. That's one of the sources, but there's many sources. And I would suggest to you that one of the primary sources that you can rely on is trade associations for whatever particular industry or business you're in. If there's trade associations, they usually keep very tons of valuable information about the particular business you're in. And again, because we know we don't have complete information, we don't have perfect information, and at times we might get some new insights or information that we didn't have before. So when we do it, it's easy to come in and just plug this in at these spots, and then we link the other sheets from this central information. So with that, we go back to the depreciation schedule. And here, again, just to give you an opportunity to get some practice, I'm gonna ask you guys to go to your Google Drive folder in your spreadsheet to depreciation. And let's walk through entering the third and fourth year depreciation for some of these. If you have any questions anytime, feel free to ask. Is everyone able to access the folder?
Yeah, so quick just clarification. So on the schedule is just telling you the amount by which it's depreciating. And then on the startup sheet, it's telling you the actual total value.
Yeah, the total cost is on
Okay.
the startup sheet. Then here is where we produce this schedule, looking at the expected life for each class of asset. And then we're going to figure out the yearly cost. And this
Okay.
cost is something we're going to include on the income statement when we look at income.
Okay.
I'll give you time to do a few of these and then we'll look at and see how you're doing. Has anyone gotten to year 4 yet? Ronald, you're at year 4?
Yes.
Let me ask you, what change did you notice in year 4?
Well, in the 4, there's 2 items, there's 2 things that need to be replaced.
Yeah.
So in that year, are you, yeah, I put 0 there.
That's right, that's right.
Okay,
Because unless you make a decision to purchase, because it may still be useful. But that expense is gone. So year 4, the yearly expense should be about $2,000 less. Should be 48,000 and something in year 4. Because you've gotten rid of the 2-3 year life depreciable assets. I would think that the beekeeping safety wear probably would need to be replaced, but office equipment, who knows? Anyone have any questions about how we do this, how we set that up? And see, then we want to take you back to this the startup cost depreciation sheet. I'll go to the top. Can I freeze this top so I can scroll down? I'm not familiar with.
Should be able to under view, right?
Yeah, I can't even see it.
Oh,
Okay, here we go. Move that. Okay.
yeah, some kind of freeze panes there. You see that? Should let you do it.
Where'd you see that?
Kind of in about 3/4 of the way to the right.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
like freeze top pane or something.
Yeah. I've been used to using Excel, but I want to show you this about depreciation. Now, we calculated on the depreciation sheet the yearly depreciation, but here on this sheet, we're looking at it by month. So that calculation we see here in the formula bar. We do depreciation, D12. So let's go to depreciation. D12, that was 50,910. Okay, and let's go back to this. Divided by startup E63. So let's come down to 63, E6312. That's just the number of periods in the year. And that calculates our monthly depreciation. I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. Monthly depreciation. And because it stays constant, I just copied it all the way over. But in the year that we have some changes, we need to actually have this set up like this. Okay. Anyone have any questions about how we set up the depreciation schedule? There's going to be a change in year 4. There'll be another change in year 6. And then, of course, after year 7, and if we purchase any other equipment or any other major asset during the period, you just add them onto this schedule so that your annual depreciation expenses is captured. Okay, now let's look at labor. Labor is going to be a major cost. Let me look here at the labor expense from the fixed costs. See, that's the largest single cost we have. So let's look at labor for a minute. Here, when you make your labor sheet, you want to capture the various positions, different pay scales, hours of operation, the days per week. And this is fact information we want to try to capture. Here I'm looking at the various classification of workers. You have beekeepers, processors, operators, someone in sales and marketing. And then I had beeswax manufacturing part-time, but I didn't put the position there. I actually took it off. But that should be 0. And I want you to see what happens when we change that. See, let me put 2 people there and let's see what happens. Let's take. So here this is where you monitor or calculate the payroll taxes. Here I use 12%, and that would vary. Partly because what you pay in federal unemployment tax, state unemployment tax, is based on the first $7,000 of wages. And after that, you're done paying it for the year. So that figure is pretty close, but it could vary. There's Social Security, Medicare, federal unemployment tax, which is you have a credit of 5.4%. So the charge is 6%, but you have a credit of 5.4. So the net cost is about 0.6%. And then you might have the state unemployment and workers' comp. Workers' comp is usually about 80% on $100. But you would want to develop a labor schedule that will feed your fixed costs here, budget fixed costs. And also you're going to also be carried over to the income statement for cost. Any questions about the labor? And here I'll show you the calculations also here for weekly pay. And here at the formula bar, you see that It's simply the product of C4, $19 an hour times D4, which is 80 hours a week. This is for 2 positions. And we see that calculation there again is 2 times B14, which is the number of hours per week, 40. This way, if any of this changes, all of this updates automatically. You know, you may decide to go to a 10-hour workday. Some people do that. So you can change that here, and it will show up here.
Penny, Brendan had a question, wondering that if the payroll, you pay up to $7,000. Can you clarify what you were meaning by that?
Oh, yes, this, some of the taxes you pay, like the federal unemployment tax, we have a 0.6%, would be 0.6% of their weekly pay up till that weekly pay accumulates to $7,000 per person. Once the person has earned $7,000, then you no longer withhold federal unemployment tax for them. And the same thing with state unemployment tax, as has the base of $7,000.
Benny, do you mean that you only withhold 7,000 or less for that person over the year, or only 60% of 7,000 per person?
Yeah, only 0.6% of 7,000.
And then you just stop withholding, period,
Yes.
for that person. Oh, that's good to know. I didn't realize it.
Yes. You know, and Medicare used to be something similar. They had a higher payout. I can remember when it used to be around, what, 70-some thousand, 80,000. Then it gradually increased to, I don't even know what it is now, something in the 6 figures. But it used to be the same way for Medicare. Once you reached a certain income level, then you had paid up for the year.
Penny, I had another question. So you had labor under fixed costs. In what, would you always have labor under fixed costs, or like what is an industry that labor would be like a variable cost?
It is sometimes used as variable, especially when you have a lot of seasonality, or you might be hiring or laying off due to seasonal factors. But for this, we just assume, because it was simpler to deal with, just assume that the workforce that you hired, you're going to maintain it for the year. So in a situation like that, I just put it under fixed costs, because it's not going to vary with sales. Now, of course, if there was a major drop in sales or a major increase in sales, even, you would have to adjust labor to accommodate it, probably. But here was just for the sake of simplicity, just assume that it was fixed. Yeah. But yeah, it could very well be at least have variable components. Any other questions about the labor sheet? Now we get to the fun part of sales.
I have a question, particularly around the labor piece. I guess I'm also trying to figure out, like, so is the admin or the people who are doing, I guess in the co-op, I'm trying to understand a little bit more about how admin breaks down. Like, when you're doing that, like, say all these folks who are the beekeepers or the processors, whatever, the assumption is that they're members of the co-op, and I guess I'm trying to understand, like, do you hire a bookkeeper, or do you, like, is it the responsibility, or is it kind of like a collective thing? You know what I'm saying? Or is somebody compensated to do this?
Yeah, it can go either way. Some co-ops do it all in-house and some hire contractor services. Actually, we are considering starting the back office support services for co-op. That's something that I think we would want to explore. Something that would be cost effective for the local co-ops. Not be a burden.
Okay.
But yeah, I've seen it. I've heard of it done both ways, or a number of ways.
Yeah, I just wanted to think like how to account for people who are not necessarily getting workers' comp benefits, but have some type of staff role.
And the thing about workers' comp, even here in Tennessee, is the question becomes a little, it's not so definite with co-ops because it depends on how you structure it. If you structure it as an LLC with pass-through, meaning the workers are viewed legally as and technically as the owners, and the income passes through, then you're not required to do workers' comp or unemployment taxes.
Sorry, Benny, can you say that one more time?
If your business is structured as an LLC and you allow the pass-through of income to your members, the member owners, then they're considered owners and not so much employees. And so that workers' comp isn't required. Some of the unemployment taxes that typically employers pay for employees isn't required. But it depends on how you structure it. And how
Like
you
if the owners are getting some type of benefit from the income, that is what you're saying, like the pass-through piece.
the pass-through is where the profits of the net revenue accrues to the owners, and they're the ones
Okay.
that, just like a partnership, basically.
I got you. But I guess it's kind of tricky because if someone gets hurt on the job, you might want workers' comp, right?
Yeah, and that's something that the co-op should decide. It would be good, I would think, to have some means of providing for your co-owners and co-workers if something happened, some type of workers' comp insurance, especially given the rate. In Tennessee, though, workers' comp kind of sucks because it doesn't pay much of anything, but it's something that they gutted over the years. But I can see where some type of disability insurance or something would be helpful.
And this is another question I think around this question too, like if there wasn't necessarily a workers' comp thing, but some type of reserve set aside, could that's also accounted here? Like if members did need some type of compensation on top of or to support.
Yeah, I mean, if the co-op wanted to provide something like that, yeah, you can include it as part of your labor costs.
Labor costs, okay, cool. Just trying to think where I would put that.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to sales. But before we go to sales, I've got another video I want to show you if I can remember how to get to it. So I need to stop sharing, right? And then I'll figure this out in a minute, guys. I'm sorry. Oh, some brave souls. Okay, let me go back to it and find it. Okay, now I've got to. Okay, I think I got it that time.
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out some other revenue generating possibilities with beekeeping. This happened to be candle making. And sorry, it doesn't have any sound. I don't know what I did about the sound here. But what he's showing is this piece of equipment is capable of dispensing measured quantities of the beeswax, melted beeswax. That's the setting that controls the set point. Beeswax melts at a higher temperature than paraffin wax or some even soy-based wax. So that means the candles will burn longer. And it's cleaner. It doesn't produce the soot that you get from paraffin. And so it's much easier on your respiratory system. So it has a lot of positive benefits, beeswax candles. And here's just one possibility for setting up an operation that manufactures candles. Now, we also wanted to explore lip balms. And this equipment that they sell also is capable of dispensing 0.15 ounces of beeswax. And that is the quantity of beeswax that's in the lip balm tube. So. This is the equipment that sold for about, I think it was $30,000 on our startup budget. Now we're looking at sales. Sorry, someone have a question? Comment? Okay. Now let's look at sales. The various products that we'll be selling for this particular business is honey, of course, wholesale, and that's the totes or the other huge containers that we're looking at. Retail, when we say retail online sales, retail beeswax, lip balm, beeswax candles, and we have several types of candles. These are the what they call the pillar candles. One is 2 by 3, 2 inch by 3 inch. The other is 3 by 3, and the other is 3 by 6. So, in putting together the sales budget, we want to look at, of course, the price per unit. And here for wholesale, we look at the price of wholesale honey, raw honey, is $5.50 a pound. And here we looking at we have the barrels that we're producing. Remember, each barrel holds 650 gallons. And we look at our 3 harvest times, June, August, and September. And here we're saying that we're going to produce or harvest 10 barrels for the wholesale market. In August, 10 barrels, and then in September, 7. Taking less in September because we want to give the bees an opportunity to build up their stores for winter. Then we look at the retail market for raw honey. And the retail market is about $9 a pound. So you got considerably larger margin in retail than in wholesale, of course. But then when you look at the beeswax lip balm per ounce, it's $20 an ounce. And that's considering that the little tubes that they sell, it only holds about 0.15 ounce of beeswax. The burnt beeswax. And that sells for those tubes, sell for about $3. So it nets out to about $20 an ounce for beeswax. And then candles, the 2x3 contains 6.7 ounces. So that's about $11.50 an ounce we sell it for. 3x3, 10 ounces for $24. And then 3x6 is 20 ounces for $38. So these are the prices and the various sizes and products that we feel that we can sell. Again, we said that the barrel, 55 gallons, holds 650 pounds each. The totes, 275 gallons, hold 3,200 pounds each. When we sell wholesale, we sell in these containers. Now, our expected harvest for honey, we're saying that we think we can do 100 pounds per colony, per hive, which is average for, let's say Mississippi averages 112 pounds per colony. Some of the more efficient beekeepers reportedly can produce up to 200 pounds per colony. But here we chose to go in the middle and go with 100 pounds per colony. We have 500 colonies. So that's 50,000 pounds of honey that will be available for sale. And we decided to divide that market by selling 18,000 pounds in the wholesale market, and the other 32,000 pounds in the retail market. And we did that largely because of the margins that were available in both markets. And then we said we will internally produce 750 pounds of beeswax. And this is a calculated figure based on the amount of beeswax that is usually harvested or separated per 100 pounds of honey. And that's on this page here, the startup. And that's a calculation there based on this 50,000 pounds of honey we're producing in the startup calculation. Let's go to that real quick. That's startup C62. That was 100 pounds. You get 1.5 pounds of beeswax to 100 pounds. E62 on the startup page, but that's how that calculation was derived. And because there's 16 ounces in a pound, we said beeswax ounces, because we're going to be selling the beeswax basically in ounces. So we'll have about 12,000 ounces that we will produce internally. But we think we can sell more. So that's why we are going to buy an additional 6,000 pounds of beeswax for the year, which will produce 96,000 ounces that we're buying, that with the 12,000 ounces that we produce internally, we'll have 108,000 ounces of beeswax sale for the year. So that's a monthly allotment of about 9,000 ounces. And this is how we chose to allocate the beeswax. 6% will go to lip balm. We think we might be able to get into that market. And then the rest would be in candles, 22% for the 2x3s, 50% for the 3x3 candles, and then another 22% in the 3x6. And some of the prices that we've got that we're trying to meet our competitors, here's some of the competitors for the lip balms. Portland bee balm, and then of course, birch bees. I think they're both available on Amazon. You can get a comparison of some of the prices. So given this breakdown of volumes and our pricing, then we'll come here to the sales budget. And we'll start populating the sales. Here with raw honey, he said 6,500 is at C54. It's how many pounds that we would harvest in June. 6,500 pounds we would harvest in August. 4,550 is the pounds we would harvest in September. So here at the wholesale honey, our price that we've also had here lower, price of $5.50 per pound for raw honey. And there's a calculation that will result in $35,750, the product of D6, and D7. And we would do that across the road for raw honey. Again, in July, we didn't produce any or didn't sell any. And we're assuming that we contract to sell these upon production, that we entered into contracts with wholesalers to supply them this amount of honey. And in August, we were contracted to sell another 6,500 pounds. Then in September, we were contracted to sell 4,550. And these are the income that resulted from it. And then for the retail, online retail, of course. And here we just looked at the monthly total that we had at C, this is C81 divided by 12. So we had a yearly total of 32,000 pounds that we were going to have for of honey available for sale. So we took that 32,000 pounds, divided by 12, number of months, which is on the other page. It shows you how much we hope to sell. And I know that this is not realistic because typically your sales is going to have some variations in it from month to month, but just for illustration purposes and for the purpose of an example, I just decided to keep it constant, make it easier to deal with. So selling this much of honey, this many pounds, 26.67 at $9 a pound, this would be the revenues that we expect from it. And then again, of course, the same thing for the lip balm. Here we got the quantity from D91, which is $504 ounces of that we're selling. And the other products, these are the ounces that we would be selling total for the period. So any questions about our calculations here and how we arrived at this?
Cool question. So I guess I have a question around like scale. So an operation like this is a pretty large business.
Yeah.
Like for projection purposes, I guess I was like, I'm thinking, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm thinking particularly with the co-op I'm with, like we have various options for things that revenue streams. And
Mhm.
so I guess I'm trying to think about like, you know, how do you make a decision on what is the most valuable product or the most valuable product if you're not doing all of those?
Well, and this is the usefulness of something like this, because you can do some what ifs easily and change these numbers and see what impact will it have.
Okay.
You know, because what if we come over here and we decide that, let me see, our yield was not quite what we had expected. Oh, this is in production. And we didn't get, or we didn't have, say we didn't have 500 hives. That something happened because beehives do have illnesses. Mites is a particular problem for them. So what would happen? One of the things I wanted to point out to you guys was, let me see if I can move this where I can see it. The relatively profitability of the different, and here we're looking at the year totals, of the different components. Because here you see in raw honey, at 96,000 in sales for the year, relative to the cost that we had. In raw honey retail, we had 288,000. But then when we look at something like beeswax, 120, 41, 129, 45. I would say that we probably had more or just as much income or revenue from the beeswax as we did from the honey. And then we point out something else. Let's go back and look at the startup cost of especially the big items of depreciation, which is based on this equipment. You see the beekeeping processing equipment, that's 137,000. The beehives themselves, 125,000. Then we had the flatbed truck that we needed in order to transport the super boxes. So that's quite a bit of money we've got invested for the honey relative to what we had for the beeswax. Beeswax primarily, what, $30,000 for equipment here? And then you look at that in comparison relative to the revenues that it's producing. I would almost be tempted to say that we need to be in the beeswax business and let someone else sell the honey or produce the honey. Because you could buy beeswax for $9 and something a pound, $9.50 a pound, and then turn around and sell it almost $20 an ounce for lip balm lip balm is the most extreme example, but you're getting $20 an ounce for a little tube of lip balm. Candles, this is by the ounce. Now you're paying $9 a pound for this wax, and this is what you're getting for 6 ounces, 10 ounces, 20 ounces. So that's something that, you know, when you look at these numbers, it's something you want to look at. And that's why you want to go in and adjust these numbers to see what impact would that have on your bottom line. Now, I didn't complete these. I was hoping we would have time to do these when we look at the net income. Let me move this box. I want to look at the income statement real quick. Here we're looking at total sales by month. That's complete. And then we look at cost of goods sold. That's the cost of the beeswax, basically. Then we look at the other items, the variable expenses we had. And I didn't go, I was gonna have you guys do this. I don't think we're gonna have time to finish this out. But what I wanted you to see was this margin here. 65,000 margin and income before taxes. It's 32,000. This number is not accurate because we haven't filled this in. But if we were to fill this in, what we want to look at is how profitable is the business. And then if we put more of our effort into beeswax rather than honey, how would that change? And that's a lot easier to do when you have all these things linked. So you can go into the key spots and change the quantity of what's allocated for even the allocation among the beeswax products. Because clearly lip balm was the most profitable business. Let me find that again, but that only got 6% of our focus. What if we change that to, oh, let's say 90%. Then reduce the rest of these. Now we've got sales lip balm, it's up 162,000.
Sales not even wide enough to calculate all those profits.
So, and that's per month. You know, and of course the rest of this is not finished. I was thinking we would have more time than we do. So we could have completed the whole thing and kind of see. But those are the type of things you can do when you have this linked. And you can kind of say, what if we did this? What if we pivoted and decided to capitalize on this? Now the question is, could you reasonably challenge some of the other folks in that market? Possibly. But that would appear to be a much more profitable market. I mean, if profit was your primary concern here, than selling honey. But these are the type of what ifs. These are the type of scenarios you can explore when making your decisions about, okay, what do we do? Let me do that. Oh. Absurd. We have $1.9 million in lip balm. But any questions? And all of these are numbers that are have to expand the box.
Can you go back to the income statement?
Yeah.
I always get a little confused around the COGS, the cost of goods sold.
Uh,
So I wanted to know if you could answer that before we cut off.
Okay, okay. Yeah, in here, what we're looking at, the cost of goods sold, we didn't consider something like honey, because honey is, we incorporate all those costs in the variable expenses, and then, of course, the equipment expenses. So this only pertain to the cost of the beeswax. So here, startup E40, so we go to startup E, let's come down to 40. That was the purchase of beeswax. We paid $57,000 for the beeswax that we're selling at almost $20 an ounce for the most part. So this is what it costs us each month. Cost of goods sold, $47.50, and that's D40 at 57,000 divided by E63, which is 12 months period a year. That gives us total sales, cost of goods sold. Now, I know that looks absurd with all of that emphasis on lip balm, but and I'm sure lip balm is probably it was certainly a seasonal product also that probably have higher sales in the winter than we do in the summer. And we didn't reflect any of that seasonality here, but just wanted to point out the utility of using these statements by organizing your input data, your input factors in a way that you can change those and explore the what ifs. And then I also have a page here called breaking analysis. And this number means nothing because we didn't have complete figures. So that CM ratio is probably doesn't apply. But basically your break-even point is the amount of sales in which you break even, given your fixed costs divided by and I'm showing you that formula, the fixed cost C3 divided by your contribution margin ratio. And I'm gonna show you what that is. That's C5, right? That's this, your margin, which we had from the income statement, divided by the sales. You divide fixed costs by that, because what the contribution margin says is that this is what you got to contribute toward covering the fixed cost. Because all of this is variable. The margin, contribution margin, the margin is part of the variable cost. You know, cost of goods sold, other very expensive. So what you have left, the margin, is what you got to contribute toward the coverage of fixed costs. And when you have that type of percentage, you just merely divide the fixed cost by the margin. It tells you at what point would you start to make a profit. here is once sales reach 650,000. Once we complete the income statement and get that whole thing in, then that would start to make more sense. And you can see better what's going on there. And all of this is just where I've got, these numbers are so huge since we went to lip balm that they're too big for the space. Any questions, anyone? Comments?
I put one in the chat, Benny.
Yeah.
I don't want to ask a couple questions, so I was trying to make some space if other people had some. But maybe not.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah, I just put something in there about patronage dividends, the amount that goes to the worker owners or whatever kind of owners the co-op has at the end of each year or so. Is that show up in any of these tabs?
I didn't. Yeah, we could add that on if you like, but I just didn't put it on. I didn't put it on.
Yeah, would you consider it under labor, or would that be considered in some other category, you think?
No, it's not really an expense. It really is a share,
Profit.
a share of the earnings.
Yeah.
Or a distribution of the earnings. So it's not really like an expense, an operating expense. It's not like wages, anything like that. So it wouldn't have any impact on your, in and of itself, on your operating decisions.
I guess if I'm following your break-even analysis, it would only happen if you did reach the break-even amount and there was surplus. Is that right?
What's that now? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just asking if I understood your break-even analysis idea. I haven't really, I don't really know much about that, but that just the idea of breaking even makes sense to me. So if you reach the break-even amount and surpassed it, then there would be surplus to redistribute to the owners. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Or
well, I'll say redistribute, but it depends on what the goal and aim of the co-op, because it could be you might want to retain earnings to expand or whatever, but yeah, it would be available for that if you so chose.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I was hoping we had more time to actually go through and do the numbers, but I'm always a poor estimator of time. Perhaps I talked too much and should have spent more time letting you guys crunch numbers, but I will give some time to Gretchen. She wants to remind you guys of something.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Benny. This is really awesome, and thank you for putting so much time in to set up all like the numbers, you know, as an example. The only thing I really have to say is if you could please fill out this evaluation. We're trying to, you know, really like cater things to you all to see like what you all need and how we can support you best in the great work that you're doing. Benny, if you all want to fill this out before you leave, or just open it and have it on your computer and fill it out later, that'd be great. But I think we'll stick around for a little bit here. If you have any additional questions, but feel free to reach out as well. So, oh, we also have another event coming up next month, so I'll also send you the Eventbrite for that as well.
And let me say, if sometime in the future you guys want to look at more with this spreadsheets, I'll be more than happy to. If you have any questions individually and want to contact me, feel free. And I am no expert by any stretch, but I will be more than happy to share what little bit I know about them.